I used to be a failure, but since my divorce I've become the dream husband and father my ex-wife always wanted. I was the I know it. My ex and I 40s married in college in our early 20s. We went from living in the dorms together to being married and living on our own in another state due to my job. We enjoyed the honeymoon period with each other along with being young 20-somethings in an exciting new city. Not long after being married she was pregnant and our first child a few months after our first anniversary. She was a SOM. I picked up overtime to cover everything. She matured way faster than I to support the baby. I was still closer to being a college dorm student than I was a husband-father equal. We had constant fights how I wasn't doing enough to help or supporting her physically or emotionally. I kept trying to tell her how I was doing enough, how I worked 80 hours last week, how I changed a diaper last week, how I cooked my own meal just for me so she wouldn't have to, etc. She would explain her problems and how I could help her but I didn't hear them. I just wanted to argue. I used weaponized incompetence before that term was coined. In my mind I was working hard and she was just being unrealistic and couldn't see how much I did. In reality, there was far more work than I realized. My ex was drowning and asking for help and all I would do was argue with her about how there was no way she was drowning. Things would improve every few months, partly because I would do a little more work, partly because she just internalized her frustrations and stopped initiating conversations about them. We had another child during this time, but this soon added even more stress and the fights grew even worse. Eventually she said she couldn't handle it any longer and moved in with family a few hours away. I tried to win her back through love bombing again, before I knew what that was and figured she would come to her senses. And so I was extremely surprised when I got served the divorce papers. I couldn't believe it. I never cheated on her, I didn't abuse her, I had no vices, we loved each other. How could she be divorcing me? Yet she did. And when we met with lawyers I was taken off guard by how much resentment there was towards me. Where had that come from? We agreed to every other weekend visitations. The first time I had to take care of my 2 toddlers on my own for 2 whole days was an eye-opener. I had done it once or twice when married, but she had prepped everything, pre-made the meals, picked out the clothes, cleaned the house, etc. I was still learning how to consistently do the laundry and wash the dishes every day and pick up after myself. I had gone from living with my parents, to living in the dorms with roommates who constantly cleaned, to living with my ex. I knew how to take care of a house but never had to do it all on my own. Someone else always picked up the slack. And now I was fully responsible for that and for 2 little lives for 48 hours. I remember being completely overwhelmed, and hit by a huge wave of empathy and understanding of where she had been over the past few years and what I had done to her. I apologized to her, but that only made her angrier. So I grew up. I vowed to make the most out of each weekend with my children. I learned how to cook. I actually liked cooking. I learned how to braid hair. I bought tons of unnecessary toddler supplies and packed them all in the stroller just in case my kids needed something on a walk, etc. On my own time I picked up new hobbies and went to the gym. I read the non-fiction, how to relationship books that my ex had been begging me to read. Overall I worked on myself and tried to become a super dad to my kids. A couple of years after the divorce I started dating again. Being a single dad in my late 20s was a turn off to a lot of women and I was rejected often. But I found myself being matched with other single moms and really connecting with them. I eventually met my now wife, a single mom whose ex had abandoned her for someone else and wanted nothing to do with their children. And to her, I was the perfect catch, a loving dad who worked hard, did the household chores, and was devoted to her. I learned from my mistakes in my first marriage, and took all the criticisms my ex had made about me to heart and improved from them. I became the husband my ex tried to make me into. I still slip up, and still have a lot to learn. But I do that with the support of my wife. I would still see my ex every other week and the relationship improved somewhat. But there was still an undertone of resentment in each interaction. She went back to school, got a job, and raised our kids as a single mom. I tried to get more visitation as they got older but she fought back, and due to them living too far for daily visits, I only got longer summers with them. I have no idea about her dating life. I never asked the kids about her, but she is unmarried. I know very little about her life. She could be very happy and enjoying everything, but within our few interactions very little of that shows. Now, our youngest is a senior and going to graduate, and I've been talking to my ex more to prepare for it. It's mostly cordial, but occasionally hints of anger and passive-aggressive comments come out. I have thanked her for being a wonderful mother to our children and raising them, and again apologized for never being there or taking her seriously all those years ago. I still feel like the though, sometimes because of how she understandably treats me, and other times just from my own guilt of how I treated her when we were married. She is about to have an empty nest after devoting her life to children when I failed her, and I am living the suburban family life we had planned for but with someone other than her. Am I still the author learning from my divorce and becoming the husband I should have been with my ex?